Just a heads up, this show contains references to suicidal thoughts and mental health struggles. If you're affected by what you hear, please see the show notes for links on where you can receive help. Hi, I'm Joe Hart and welcome to Footballers Unfiltered. This is not just another football podcast. This is a brand new show from FIFPRO, the global union for professional football players, which is bringing real and often hidden conversations among the players of today, both on and off the pitch, straight to you.
After all, what these perpetrators want is to fix matches. And to fix matches, they need the people in the pitch.
Sadly, a hot topic in football at the moment is match fixing. This is where there is an intentional, improper attempt to influence the unpredictable nature of a football match to obtain an undue advantage. With the emerging betting markets, the risk of manipulation is higher than ever, and according to research from FIFPRO, they claim that 1 in 10 players during their career will be approached. Samir Arab is a player currently playing in Balzan in Malta. He sadly got caught up in a situation and paid the price. He is now working hard to bring attention to match fixing, and this is why he's our guest today.
I remember being in front of the investigator and I told him, can I testify anonymously in court? He told me, no. How am I going to be protected? We can place police by your side. A 21-year-old wanting to have a private life, having police, what kind of life is that, to be honest? What kind of protection also is that? I mean, no one can guarantee my safety.
So Roy, welcome to the podcast. I'm really interested with what we've got coming up, but I think it's really important, especially as a former player, that you explain who you are and what you do, please.
I'm the legal director of FIFPRO, and one of the main tasks or main things we do is actually represent players in a wide variety of subjects. So it can go from players who don't get paid, which in a country like Romania is 600 to 700 players every year, to training alone, players being excluded from collective training and want to be reintegrated with the rest of the squad. Sometimes it goes to pretty bad situations of players being beaten up. We had similar cases in other countries of players being locked up in the office of the president because they didn't want to sign a termination agreement. And then, of course, we have all those cases where there is a disciplinary infringement. It goes from anti-doping to match fixing.
But today we're focusing on the match fixing. And, I'm really interested to know, in your expert opinion, is that something that's really prevalent in the modern game?
There are studies around that says that 1 of every 10 players will be approached to fix a match at some point in time. So this is why we also are part of a few projects in which we encourage that actually law enforcement works together with football associations, because neither of them can do it alone, and we try to make that connection between them. We also have to defend players every now and then of those players who we think are wrongfully convicted by sports governing bodies. For example, we had a case with 26 players in Ghana who, just because the Ghana Football Association got a report that there was something wrong with the game from the betting operators or the sport data companies, that they just sanctioned every player on the field that day.
I think it's really important that all football players around the world are made aware of this. And obviously we don't want you to have to do what you do, but I think it's really important that people feel safe and they've got somewhere they can come.
Yeah, thanks. Likewise.
It'll be great to bring Samir into the podcast now and we can hear his story. So Samir, you're playing for the under-21 Malta national team. You guys are doing really well. You get invited for a coffee with a former teammate, and then the world changed for you. Can you explain to me what's gone on?
No, as you said, we were doing quite well for a Malta under-21 national team. We got 5 points from the first 5 games, which is the maximum the Malta national team has ever got. Things were doing good, we were doing well. And I had a former teammate of mine from the youth level, under 17 level, who invited me over for a coffee, and we get to the cafe. I see another 2 teammates of mine of the Malta under-21 national team. We sit down for a chat and a coffee, and then the intentions were clear, Listen, you're doing well. You drew against Montenegro away. You're playing them next home. The odds will be good. We want to fix the match.
Wow, so this is a former teammate that you played with and I presume you trusted. You had no reason not to trust.
Exactly. I had no reason not to trust. I didn't even know he was involved or whether it's his first time or not. I made my intentions clear of not wanting to be part of it. I kept receiving calls and messages. I went to him and wanted to do it face to face. And what happened next is he got another match fixer with him and they tried to convince me to do it. The answer was still no. The match went through. The game, how they wanted to manipulate it wasn't. So basically, they wanted to lose each half by 1 goal and the final result would be to lose by at least 2 goals. We lost only 1-0 and as a team we did well. I had a very positive performance, praised by the coach. And to be honest, I was so confident in my performance that I wanted to use that performance as evidence when I eventually got in front of the UEFA board. So,
Roy, you can help us here. What could Samir have done differently in that situation?
Well, there you come to the crucial part of where it is all about, that there is an obligation to report to authorities, to the sports governing bodies, basically. You come in a situation completely involuntary. Like someone comes to you and says, okay, well, you need to fix a match. I say, no, this is the end of it.
What technically is being approached? Because, I talked about my naivety to this situation and being a goalkeeper, being in a local cafe and someone who supports an opposition team will say to me, oh, Joe, make sure you let one in next weekend. And it's a joke, it's funny, and lots of people are listening. But technically, where would that leave me, Because it sounds like Samir's just being asked to do something that he didn't want to do. When are you technically involved?
There's a very technical definition by UEFA, FIFA, etc., where you can undue influence for benefit for a third person or for yourself, etc. But in principle, every approach about influencing a match should be reported. So we now sometimes get players reporting that someone won money because on the betting sites because they scored a goal. They send them a thank you message on Instagram and they report it. And I think it's a good thing. That is not a match fixing approach. But as soon as you get to that level of education, thinking, okay, players are even reporting that, I think we're on the good road. Yeah.
So did you have any previous experience in terms of people trying to help you and people trying to educate you about match fixing and that side of the game? Because I'm trying to think back in my experience and I've had many people come and talk to me about many different things. When it comes to match fixing, of all the information I've ever been given, I can't recall anything. So for example, if it had happened to me, I wouldn't have actually known what to do.
That's the funny thing, and one of the points we try to point out, because UEFA states that everyone is obliged to be educated, like they put that responsibility on the association. Now, up until 21 years of age, we never really had listen, if you're approached, you need to go through these steps, these are the people to report. Even the people you are reporting to, they are strangers to you. So in something of this manner, how comfortable will you be going to tell someone? We've seen corruption in all stages of football, whether it's FIFA, UEFA, whether it's player, whether it's coaches, whether it's referees. How can you anticipate whether or predict, listen, is this guy on my side or not, when you never really have spoken to him? What if I go to him and he's part of them? Is it something out of this world for that to happen? So that's why it's not really easy. Education wasn't there. We made that point many times.
So Roy, obviously I'm sat here fairly shocked at what's gone on. It sounds like you can get yourself in trouble without doing anything wrong, simply by being approached and not knowing what to do in the next phase of this situation. Is this something that's very common in the game? Is it something that you hear of a lot?
There's quite a big problem with match fixing in football. Yeah, we did some studies a while ago, and for example, in Malta, around 15% of players had been approached. Now, if you know the numbers around how many would then report it, then something does not add up because it's much lower than that. The number of cases where we really deal with players being sanctioned for not reporting, I can probably count them on one hand. We don't have it that often, but we do get a lot of reports in. For example, via Red Button app, which is something which FIFPRO developed, which we give to players so they can anonymously report.
I advocated for the Red Button app together with FIFPRO. I was quite happy with it because associations like FIFPRO, even the Malta Football Players Association, was so of great help. And it's crucial for players to have associations that protect their rights and care about them.
Have you ever played in a game yourself where you thought something is not correct here? Have you had any experience with match fixing or?
Honestly, yeah, I've lived in such a world where everything's fair.
Yeah,
and I know it's not. I'm not stupid. I'm also, I'm a grown man. I understand how the world works. But once I cross that line, I play to win, and I've always felt like I've experienced the opposition are trying to beat me as well. So no, I haven't, but that's probably because I was blissfully unaware that it was happening more than maybe it actually is.
Yeah.
If you were 21 again, going into that cafe, having that conversation, but you knew what you know now, the Red Button app's in place, how would you have handled that situation differently?
I would have reported anonymously for sure, pointing out details that may help an investigation to start. When I was approached the first time, there were 2 other players. So it would have been much easier to give details without exposing myself. So if you say, listen, this guy approached me, and then you start an investigation, and maybe the police can interrogate him and stuff, then you can get somewhere. And that's why I see it still valid for people to report anonymously, because you can still get somewhere. And we need to understand that it's not easy, to go to someone you have never spoken to, because the rule states you should speak to the integrity officer, if I'm not wrong. And the integrity officer was a guy I've never spoken to. I told him, listen, if you start having conversation, going to clubs, you're building some kind of relationship, it would be easier for people to trust that person. From the sense of a first impression or anything. That's the truth. I would report it using the app, but make sure I'm anonymous. Because the important point for me is not getting myself into danger, not getting my family into danger, and hopefully living a normal life after that.
I think that's important, right? Interpol, Europol, they all concur that this is organized crime most of the time, which is behind it. And it's a little bit naive, I think, from sports governing bodies to expect that a young player makes a report about organized crime to a sports governing body, which can literally do nothing to protect them. And there was another case in Malta beforehand in which a player said, well, I can report this, but I need to have complete anonymity, and someone needs to protect me when something happens. And that wasn't done because within a week, his name was all over the island and he was being chased around by the persons who had approached him. And the police was not protecting him because they were not in contact with the FA at that time. So, look, we couldn't change the part where the rule says that you need to report, but we could do something to perhaps make it easier. So that's why we created that app. The major point around it is that, contrary to the other ones, is it's only players who have access to it, because someone of the player union comes in the dressing room and says, hey guys, this is the app, you need to download it, you get a special code, everyone. And therefore also, whenever a report is made, you know it's coming from a player. And I think that's very valuable because the apps of UEFA and FIFA, they're all on the website. So if tomorrow Club A loses, the fans are all over that app saying, hey, there was some match fixing. So it has different value.
So Roy, I'm interested, in your opinion, do you think that Samir was made an example of? Because it makes me think that rather than educate, you can scare people.
Yeah.
And you can use Samir as an example. He didn't come forward quick enough. He came forward, but not quick enough. And he's getting a 2-year ban. Do you think that was potentially making an example?
I think at the time, yes. And I'm saying that also just personally because, I came we came out of that courtroom and I was 100% convinced, the only time in my career I was 100% convinced that something would be done about the sanction. And as any lawyer will tell you, when you have that feeling, you're going to lose the case. And we lost the case 100%. And I remember I was just furious. I've never really had that. And that was just because it was so unfair in my view, because he testified in court and the judge said, you are a very important witness because without you, I cannot put the instigator of the match fixing approach, I cannot put him in jail. We always made the point. What do you want with match fixing? You want players to say no to match fixing, and you want people instigating match fixing. You want them to go to jail, right? Yeah. And as a sports governing body, you cannot do that. Only the police and the prosecutor can do that. And in this case, that happened. He said no. All 5, 6, 7 players who were involved said no.
The initial person that approached me testified in court that I rejected the approach. And coming back to what Roy said, I mean, I was, by the Maltese Court of Justice, by the magistrate, a very important witness. Like, without me, they couldn't give the sentence that they wanted to. But then UEFA said that is not enough. So what is more that we can expect from someone? Even testifying in court is not an easy thing to do, because they say, listen, who's the guy that approached him? You mentioned the name's guy, point at him. And that whole experience is really not nice. I mean, it put you in a much uncomfortable position. I mean, today maybe we're here and I have no problem speaking about it, but God knows what I may have done to myself or how I may have reacted if things didn't go my way. For example, saying, listen, we're sentencing Samir for being involved in the match. No, I didn't do it. Suicidal thoughts, they come to your mind. Leaving the country, they come to your mind. The suffering of the family is another painful thing, because seeing your mom suffer because of you, your brother suffer because of you, the whole experience is, I wish that's on nobody. That's the truth.
Yes, I mean, I can feel that. And it must be such a strange, unique feeling that you've been a part of, and an emotional roller coaster. And credit to you being able to sit here and explain what went on. And I can only feel from you that you want to help educate people. So you're a witness in a criminal case. You know, you helped put some difficult people behind bars. But how were you sanctioned by the footballing world?
Well, by the footballing world, first, the accusation was to completely be out of football. I was facing a life ban. We had European games, Europa League games, that I didn't go to because mentally I was not there. And I asked my club, listen, I wouldn't want to be negative on the team, but my head is not there. When I'm in my head there, I'll join back training, because from the moment we received the report of the accusations until the moment it got heard, it took about 5-6 months. Then I got back into the team. So, but we fought that life ban, and then it got to 2 years without football. What does 2 years mean without football? I mean, you would understand also. I mean, 2 years not being able to visit the club's facilities, not being able to go to the stadiums, having no one to train you. You need to cover your own expenses. If I wanted to get back off football, what did I do? I hired a physical trainer. I used to go and buy the right foods, make sure that I'm eating well, because my aim was to get back at football. All of this, from the beginning, I received the report, which was a shock for me, because once we finished the Under-21 campaign, I was the only Under-21 player that for the 3 call-ups after that, with the Malta senior national team, I was the only one that was called for all of them. And 2 days before I received the report from UEFA, I was actually part of the provisional squad of the Malta senior national team. So then you get to expenses, lawyer expenses. I had 2 lawyers, flying them to Switzerland, paying them for their services, because I wanted to fight it. And that meant all my savings were spent on this. having financial help from families. 2 years without football, I mean, even 2 months nowadays is a hard thing, whether it's injury or not. But imagine being completely outside of the football world for 2 years. You need to find your own ways to finance it. I had incredible backing from my club and my club president. It still affected me even at 21 years of age. I had finished my financial course. I had worked in a bank because the salaries were low in Malta, so I had to do something else. And with this, even that put my job into risk. It was painful. And even nowadays, I have to live life with people making jokes. You took that money. They're joking with me. I know that they don't mean it, but it still creates some kind of pain and something that I have to accept to live with, And I'm also the kind of guy that jokes with everybody. So to make jokes, you're going to receive jokes. But mine are more painful because when those types of jokes are made, it gets you back to the negative part of it. And also some things I wanted to get into that doesn't have to do is with protection. Because I remember being in front of the investigator and I told him, listen, can I testify anonymously in court? He told me no. I told him, but how am I going to be protected? He told me, we can place police by your side. Can you imagine a 21-year-old wanting to have a private life, whether he wants to go out to party, to eat with friends, living at home with his parents, having police? What kind of life is that, to be honest? What kind of protection also is that? I mean, no one can guarantee my safety. So through all those 2 years, then there comes the fear of, will they get back to me for testifying in court? And these are things you have to live with. But in terms of the suspension side of it, to get back to it, it's easier said than done also. You need to put in work, you need to be mentally into it to make sure you get back. I did get back, but I lost some progress. And for sure, I haven't achieved or got to level 10, let's put it in level.
Yep.
And I got stuck at level 6, for example, because I was so naive at the beginning. I remember getting back to football saying, yes, I made it back to the club. I made it back to the Malta Premier League. Then I made it back to the national team. And I was saying, I didn't lose anything. But I feel I lost because not being a regular part of the national team, I think that's something I could have done. The 2 years I did out in terms of progress it's disappointing, I know I could have achieved more. And there may be other players that would not be able to get back to because mentally it's a tough one to take.
It's also one of the points we made. Look, we made, of course, various points from which we requested, reduce the ban or completely remove the ban, etc. But also one of the points we asked, if you don't do that, at least don't exclude Samir completely from football for 2 years, because this is a ban from all football-related activities. And as he said, he couldn't even go to the stadium anymore. He couldn't see his teammates at training. He couldn't do training. And we all agreed that he didn't do anything illegally, in the sense he didn't fix a match. We just didn't report, which is kind of understandable. So there's no point in isolating him. But even that didn't go through. And that for me, that was completely mind-blowing that even that part was not taken into account. And we made reference to the Suarez case, who at some point had a disciplinary offense with Chiellini, and he was sanctioned by FIFA for 4 months, a ban from football-related activities. And he appealed that. And there the Court of Arbitration for Sport said, oh yeah, but you get the 4 months, but you can, we reduce the part in the sense that you can still go to practice, etc. Of course, it's a different offense as well.
Yep.
But the reasoning behind it, not doing something illegal, and we all find it somehow unfair. It was quite telling that you have a different approach to certain players on a certain level, perhaps. So that was for me quite striking to see in that decision as well.
I've been trying to put myself in your situation, Samir, and for me personally, I'd be lost. Especially at 21 years old. You've done incredible to put yourself in the position that you are, not only getting through it, but looking to educate, looking to play football again, because you talked about your message to people is about the love of football. And, you know, I love football. And if someone took that away from me, if I was physically able to play it, but I wasn't being allowed, would be horrendous for me personally. What would your message be to footballers now around the world?
Oh, first of all, always remember why from such a young age you started football, how much you love doing it, and the passion behind it. Make sure that you understand why you do football. Keep that love for football. After all, what these perpetrators want is to fix matches. And to fix matches, they need people involved in football. That can range from referees or players, because after all, those are the people in the pitch. So if you have 22 players and 3 referees saying no, that won't happen. It only takes one person to influence it. But then again, from the other side of the football world, associations, big as UEFA and FIFA, need to make sure that they don't put the players in vulnerable positions. And what I mean by that, getting paid at the right time and all the stuff behind it. Because if a person has a family with 2-3 kids, not getting paid for 6 months, which stories are here, and then we put them in this position where it's literally they wanting their bread and butter, we're making it easier for these match fixers to find people to do it. And that's the thing. But my message to professional football players is keep doing it for love. Money comes after.
What you're actually saying about making players as least vulnerable as possible for match fixing approach is a very important one. We did a study amongst 13,000 professional football players, and 40% of those players reported none or delayed payments of salaries. Most simple thing that there is in football. I play football for you and the club pays me in return. That simply doesn't happen in a lot of countries. So we also had experience with a Croatian player who hadn't been paid for 5 months. A match fixer approached him and he accepted it. And he said, as soon as I accepted it, I was in. Because if you do it once, then also the match fixers know, okay, well, you're going to do it again because we're going to out you if you don't do it again. And as of course, sport governing body, football bodies have an obligation there as well to ensure that players are at least vulnerable as possible. And that means decent living for everyone involved in the game. That means players being paid on time. That means also that perhaps we should rethink why certain games are being even offered on the betting market. There's no understanding why the third league in Romania, where everybody maybe is semi-professional, is being offered on the betting market. We need to do something about it, because if you come to those players, also they will be more vulnerable to say yes to such a thing. And to come back to one point, I think, example of Samir, yes, he was. I have to give a little bit credit to UEFA as well, because afterwards they also came to us and saying, well, what we did there, probably we looked at the rule and you violated the rule and this was a sanction. It was too much into this kind of, these are the rules setting.
Yep.
And if you look what happened now, that in the latest case we had with the player of the Moldova women's team, she got 3 months. So there is and it's a pity because it doesn't help me, but there is a bit of more common sense in it.
But gives me satisfaction.
Yeah, 100%.
You know,
you can't change the past, right? But you can change the future.
And that's why it's always been a negative chapter in my life. But this is how I gain from it. A lot of players, and I don't judge them really, stay quiet and let it pass, you know. And I didn't want to do that. It gave me so much pain. It gives my family so much pain that at least I wanted something good to come out of it. And listening stories like Roy is mentioning is good. Even having UEFA, for example, to speak on behalf of match fixing and some of their law programs gives me satisfaction. Being here gives me satisfaction. It was a negative chapter, but I'm fulfilled with what I'm currently doing. That's the truth.
Credit to you. Okay, Roy, that was an incredible story. Really sad from a personal point of view to hear a fellow professional footballer go through that when he did nothing wrong. He did absolutely nothing wrong, and Obviously, he had lots of financial problems, no doubt endless problems with his family and friends. But one thing that I can really feel is that ban from football for 2 years, completely excluded from the game, almost feels like the game turned its back on him. What can we do in the future for that not to happen?
Yeah, unfortunately, it can happen to every player, but I'm happy that Samir, in the end of the day, turned it into something positive. How we can avoid this altogether is better education and also safe reporting tools for all involved. And I think also we need to ensure that sports governing bodies understand the specifics of each case. So they cannot just put a blanket rule in place and therefore think that everything falls under that. You need to have a case-by-case specific analysis.
Yeah, well, I think it's important for Sammy's story to be out there. You know, there were some elements that he's admitted he could have done better, but that was due to the lack of education. So we need to keep the players up to date. What do UEFA want from them? How do they want them to behave? Because we can't stop people approaching, but we need to have definite ways that once you are approached, you know how to protect yourself and ultimately take yourself out of this terrible situation.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I think when it comes to the approaches, it's important, as we know, to say no and then report. If you don't know who to report to, then always check with your players' union. They will know, they will support you, and they can assist you in complying with your obligations.
This has been Footballers Unfiltered, a podcast bringing you the often hidden conversations among the players today to you. Make sure you follow Footballers Unfiltered wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, you can watch the episodes on Spotify.